I stood in the opulent hall of the king mansion, where the crystal chandelier's light reflected off the cold marble floor. Everything was too extravagant, too brilliant, as if intentionally set up to remind me that I didn't belong. I was wearing a simple cream-colored dress, not a high-end designer piece, with no lace or diamonds. My black hair was held neatly in place by a small silver clip, and my face was bare. I knew that to them, I looked out of place. I heard the whispers. "She looks like she just got off a bus," someone said. "The Kings are really lowering their standards. She's so common, she'll be dumped soon enough." I lightly squeezed the champagne glass, keeping my expression composed. I didn't need to respond. I didn't need to rush. Victoria King, Nathaniel's mother, came straight towards me. Her emerald dress swept the marble floor. Her face was artificially taut, and her smile was sharp and cold. She deliberately spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sweetheart, this dress isn't up to our standards. Did you borrow it from a thrift store?" Laughter erupted, spreading through the guests around us. "She looks like a reject. What a shame for your son." My silence seemed to irritate Victoria more than anything. A distant relative came over, her lips curved in a smirk. "Darling, you must tell me where you shop for dresses. I could use a good laugh." I placed my glass on a passing waiter's tray and turned to face her. "I shop where people don't need clothes to buy confidence." The smile froze on her face. A man's voice cut in with a chuckle. "I'll give her that, she's got guts." But the crowd didn't stop. I saw Nathaniel, my fiancé, standing nearby. He was tall and handsome, with a practiced, polite smile. But when they mocked me, he just pretended to adjust his cufflink, avoiding my eyes. He didn't take a step closer. He didn't say a single word in my defense. "It's obvious she's only after Nathan's money," someone said. "Right. Why else would he marry her?" I heard it all. My fingers trembled for a moment, but I remained calm. Adrian Cole, the King family's lawyer, approached with a condescending tone. "Isabella, is it? If you really love Nathan, you should at least bring something of value. A Torres ring, perhaps." "Oh, I forgot. The Torres family doesn't have anything valuable." Laughter erupted. I looked him in the eye and said in a low but clear voice, "You sound so sure." He paused for a second before sneering. "I can spot a gold digger from a mile away." I didn't reply, but I saw the eyes of a few people in the crowd waver slightly. A young man, a friend of Nathaniel's with slicked back hair, held up a fork and shouted with a laugh, "Hey, Isabella, do you even know how to use a salad fork?" The whole room burst into laughter. He brandished the fork like a trophy. I picked up a fork from a nearby table, twirled it lightly in my hand, and then set it down with a soft click. "I know how to eat without turning it into a spectacle." The atmosphere paused. He turned away, his face red. But the laughter quickly resumed, this time directed at my shoes. "Her shoes are scuffed. They really don't belong here. I bet Victoria will kick her out before the wedding." Victoria returned, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Dear, why don't you sit in a corner so you're not an eyesore?" I looked her straight in the eye. "I'm fine right here." The laughter returned. An old man raised a glass of whiskey and sneered. "That's brave, girl. But courage can't buy you a seat at this table. You're not in the same league." I walked towards him, not too fast, not too slow, making him step back slightly. How interesting. I thought only those who are truly scared had to invent the concept of class to hide behind. His smile stiffened. That night, I heard it all. They mocked every detail, my shoes, my hair, my hands, with no jewelry. Each word was like a knife. But I stood firm. A memory echoed in my mind. My father kneeling beside me when I was a child, his hand on my shoulder. "You don't need to shout to prove yourself. Just be yourself. That's enough, Bella." I lifted my head and looked around. They didn't know what I held in my hand. They didn't know that with a single touch of my phone in my clutch, the $950 million contract they were so proud of could vanish. But it wasn't time yet. I stood there silently, as if engraving every face and every laugh into my memory. I was waiting for my moment. The wedding day arrived faster than I expected. The Kings turned the entire estate into a stage for their ostentatious wealth. Thousands of white roses lined the aisle, and the wedding tent was grand and tall, big enough for 1,000 guests, all wearing the most luxurious clothes. I walked down the aisle in a simple ivory dress, no veil, no diamonds, no heavy pearl necklace. It was just me. Enough for them to look down on, but also enough for me to stand firm. The priest began the vows. I listened, my heart as calm as a still lake. But then Victoria stood up, her face tense with hatred. Before my son agrees, tell us what is your family's net worth. Laughter erupted, as if they had been waiting for this moment. She brings nothing to this family. This family is truly disgraced. A king's son can't marry this trash. A woman in a feathered hat leaned forward, her voice acid. What did she bring to this family besides dishonor? I stood still, my hands clasped in front of me, but my chest tightened. A camera clicked. A young influencer with millions of followers held up her phone and said loudly, "This is definitely going to go viral." Caption: The King family bride looks like a thrift store reject. The whole tent roared with laughter. I lifted my head, looked straight into the camera and said, "Make sure you get my good side." The answer froze the air for a second, but then the laughter came back, twice as loud. I turned to Nathaniel. He avoided my gaze, then lowered his head and said in a voice so quiet only I could hear, "Maybe Mom is right." Those words were like a knife stabbing straight into my heart. I clenched my hands, my nails digging into my skin until I saw a little blood. I wouldn't allow myself to cry in front of them. Victoria raised her wine glass triumphantly. "This marriage will be a stain on the King name." The guests joined in. "She has nothing." "Right. Nathan deserves better." A man in a bow tie said with a sneer, "I bet you've never even been in a boardroom. You probably think merger is a menu item." Laughter erupted. I turned to him, my voice as light as a whisper. "I know how to spot a bad deal when I see one." He stiffened, his smile vanished, and he pretended to look at his phone. But the crowd was too busy mocking me to notice. I stepped forward and took the microphone from the priest's hand. My voice was calm and clear, like a final judgment. "Thank you for showing me your true colors. This wedding ends here." A gasp of shock echoed through the tent. The guests were in an uproar. Nathaniel's face turned red, and he came forward. "How dare you humiliate me in front of everyone?" I looked him in the eye. "I'm not running away. I'm calling it off." Mocking laughter erupted again. "She's crazy! She's throwing away a golden opportunity and pretending to be proud." I stayed silent. I just turned and walked slowly towards the edge of the altar. Victoria's voice hissed from behind me. "What do you think you have? No house, no wealth. Without us, you're nothing," Adrian added in a malicious tone. "Without Torres Global, you have no future. We hold that contract." Nathaniel's words were like a final whip. "Without me, you're just a zero." I stopped. All eyes were on me. I opened my clutch and took out my phone. One touch. The giant screen behind me lit up, and the words appeared clearly. Torres Global Tech terminates $950 million contract with King Group due to deceit and lack of respect. The space exploded in chaos. People screamed, whispered, and stood frozen. I turned, my voice calm but carrying far. "I don't need this family. I am Isabella Torres, the CEO you just mocked." Adrian's face went white, as if all his blood had drained. Victoria clutched her chest, trembling and collapsing to the floor. Nathaniel slumped into a chair, his mouth agape, unable to utter a single word. The entire wedding tent became a sea of chaos. Adrian staggered towards me, sweat beading on his temples. We can renegotiate, CEO Torres. Let's forget what just happened. We can rediscuss." His voice was shaking, no longer arrogant. Victoria was different. She knelt right in the aisle, her hands full of gold rings trembling. "Please forgive us. It was just a misunderstanding. Please restore the contract. I don't ruin us." Nathaniel rushed over and grabbed my hand, his voice breaking with desperation. "I'm sorry, Isabella. I was wrong. I still love you. Don't leave me. Don't go." I pulled my hand away from his, slowly and decisively. I didn't need to say anything. The way I pulled my hand away was the answer. Around us, the guests who had laughed at me suddenly changed their expressions. We've always admired you. Yes, Isabella, you're truly extraordinary. Their words were sweet, but their eyes were full of falsehood. Did they think I would forgive them? Did they think I needed their praise? An investor in the back row yelled, his voice trembling but trying to sound strong. You think you can destroy us? You'll regret starting a war with the King Group. I stopped, turning my head just enough to show half my face. My voice was low but clear on every word. Regret is the privilege of those who make the wrong decisions. I don't. The air went still, thick with tension. I heard phones ringing incessantly, reporting that the King Group's stock was in a freefall. News headlines started appearing on guests' mobile screens. Bride calls off wedding. CEO Torres collapses King Group at the altar. I turned back, my voice calm, but each word was like a hammer blow. Torres Global will transfer the entire contract to Harper Dynamics. A new shockwave swept through the tent. Chairs crashed to the floor. Some guests panicked and quietly slipped away, afraid of being associated with a crumbling dynasty. Nathaniel hadn't given up yet. He screamed, his face red with rage, his eyes bulging. No one will ever truly love you. All you have is your money. You'll die alone, Isabella. Those words cut into my heart, but they weren't enough to make me waver. I had heard them my whole life. I knew that only weak people use malicious words as a weapon. Another woman, trying to salvage a shred of pride, uttered a final insult as I walked past. Money won't keep you forever. You'll always be alone. I stopped. I opened my clutch and pulled out an old photo. It was of me and my father when I was a child. He was holding me in his arms, his smile gentle. I held the photo up for her to see. I've never been alone. I put the photo away and continued walking. The click of my heels echoed on the wooden floor, resounding in the heavy silence. Then he appeared. James Harper, the CEO of Harper Dynamics, stepped out from the guest seating. He was tall, with a calm demeanor, and his suit was neat and understated. The look in his eyes was nothing like the eyes of anyone else in that tent. There was respect. There was sincerity. He took my hand, his voice low but clear enough for the entire tent to hear. We didn't just sign a contract. I want to build a real family with you. I looked straight into his eyes. For the first time that evening, my gaze softened. I didn't say a word. I just squeezed his hand, accepting. Behind me, the air was chaotic. In front, the door opened wide. James and I walked out. A scattering of applause began, then grew into a wave of sound. It wasn't just them following along. It was a genuine acknowledgement. I left the wedding tent, leaving behind a decaying empire. The limo door closed behind me, leaving the commotion of the wedding tent behind like a storm that was fading away. But I knew that inside, the entire King family had just collapsed before the very eyes of all who had once celebrated them. I didn't look back, but I could imagine the scene. Victoria King, the woman who had stood tall with a disdainful look in her eyes, was now being turned on by her own friends. Party invitations, fancy event cards. They would all disappear from her hands overnight. She had begged me in front of hundreds of guests, and now everyone would remember that scene and use it for their own amusement. Adrian Cole, their arrogant lawyer, had buried his own career. He was fired from his law firm right after the news broke. The name Adrian would forever be associated with that failed contract, and no one would dare to hire him again. Nathaniel, the fiancé, who had laughed politely but abandoned me among the wolves, was now sitting slumped in the front row, his face drained of all color. I knew the press wouldn't spare him. His face would be plastered on tabloids with mocking headlines like Groom left at the altar or CEO Torres's fiancé from arrogant to disgraced. Those who had once mocked me, the woman in the red dress, the woman in the feathered hat, even the influencer with her phone, were all getting a taste of their own medicine. The video of them mocking me went viral, sparking a wave of public outrage. Their sponsors cut their contracts. Those people suddenly became a living lesson for the world. Never look down on others based on appearances. As for me, I didn't need to look back. I never did. As the car drove, I leaned back in the seat, James's hand still holding mine tightly. He didn't say much. He was just quietly there, and his presence became my support. And for the first time that day, I allowed myself to relax. In my mind, I saw my father. He was in his simple shirt, sitting in his old office, handing me a silver pen. This company will be yours one day, Bella. But remember, it's not just about power, it's about the truth. And you are enough, his voice whispered in my heart. I looked out the window. The sunset was painting the sky. The King Empire was crumbling, but the world kept turning, and I had stepped through another door. I didn't need their acceptance. I never did. My story, for all those who have ever been looked down upon, ridiculed, or humiliated, is a whispered promise. You are enough. You have always been enough. The fight doesn't have to be loud. It needs to be persistent, and it belongs to you. I squeezed James's hand and let out a long breath. The car rolled on, taking me away from the ashes behind me. Ahead of me was a whole new road.